Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, guys. Welcome, everybody. Just checking in. I'm going to do a little quick catch up with whoever's awake this time of the beautiful night. Welcome, everybody. Hey, Mr. Michael. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What's going on? You had excellent questions last time. So I'm curious what's going to happen because I didn't plan anything. Welcome, welcome. Let me know if you guys have questions. I'm going to take your questions today. Welcome. What you got? What you got? There's been a lot going on out here in these streets lately. Thank you, Michael. Welcome, welcome. Hi, guys. We got a couple little streams going here. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and hop on and let me know if you got questions. We had a lot of interesting things happen out here in the world. Um, you're welcome to ask me whatever questions you like to ask. Certainly, certainly, it's been an eventful week. We'll say that. That's what we'll say. So, welcome, 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 everybody. Let's see if one of my friends is trying to hop on here. Welcome, welcome. We'll see. We'll see. Welcome, everybody. I'll let you guys hop on in here. Welcome, welcome. I thought I'd do a quick catch up. Nothing major on my end. Oh, Mr. Michael says, please stay safe in this heat wave. I've been inside and I've been perfectly happy, so I understand. But during these major heat waves, I often wonder about the people who are not safe, people who are out on the streets, etc., not getting access to good air condition. I often wonder about them. Welcome, welcome. Sorry, I've got more than one camera, more than one video going, Michael. So I'm popping in. I'm checking on this side over here as well. So welcome everybody. Hi TikTok. Welcome you guys. Those of you guys who know my content, you guys know I do all kinds of content. So if you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat. Mr. Michael was on last time and he had probably 10 of the best questions we've had in a while. So that's always interesting. So welcome, welcome. Oh, good old TikTok is coming in strong. So yeah. Do you guys have questions? If you guys want to talk about something in particular or pop your question in the chat so I can see what you got here. It's always interesting to see. I think you guys are the early bunch. You guys are the early bunch. Catch you guys when you're starting to fall asleep. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, Bola. Welcome. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. TikTok over there. Welcome. So if you guys have questions, be sure to pop them in the chat. Pop them in the chat. I'll take whatever questions you have. I'm having kind of a random moment. I thought I'd see what was going on out here. Pretty quiet. What's the difference between being ready for marriage and being prepared? Is there a difference? Oof. Okay, Mr. Michael kicked off the first question of the day. So we're going to talk about marriage. We're going to start there. We're going to talk about marriage. Marriage. That's what we're talking about. Mr. Michael had the question, and here we go. We're going to get right into it. So here's the question for those of you guys on YouTube or TikTok who didn't get the question. First question came in from IG. And the question was, how do you know if you're ready for marriage? How do you know if you're ready for marriage? Is there a difference between being ready? Mr. Michael says he's been watching the Popping the Balloon. I'm not familiar with the Popping the Balloon show, so, I've heard a little bit about it. I know enough to be dangerous. From what I saw from, like, a couple of one-second reels, it looks like there's an individual who's in the line, attempting to find a partner, and there are many partners in the line attempting to find, a potential forever. And it looks like if there seems to be a match, something continues, and perhaps if there's not a match, the individual pops the balloon. Is that what is that did I get it right, Mr. Michael? Is that the premise of the show? Because I've never watched the show. I literally watched a 1-minute reel, and that's my level of knowledge on that popping the balloon show. And I don't even know if that's the name of it. That might just be the name that I gave it. But let me know. I got it? Okay, so a 1-minute reel does educate us. Turns out we can get educated through a 1-minute reel. Um, Mr. Michael asked the question, how do you know if you're ready for marriage? How do you know if you're ready for marriage? And the other part of the question is there really a difference between being ready for marriage and being prepared for marriage? What is the difference? I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about my position on marriage because I think there's a couple of things to consider. I think you have to consider what is the role of a husband or wife. I think that's the first question we probably should ask ourselves. What's the role of the husband or wife before we ask the question, are we ready? And when I say what's the role of the husband or wife, I actually mean what is the biblical role? What does the Bible say about a husband and a wife? What does it say about what it means to be able to serve in that relationship? And so some of the things the Bible will talk about, and I'm going to go off the cuff here, so I'm not going to find every little scripture, I don't think, but off the cuff, one of the things that the Bible says about marriage and readiness for marriage is that the women, for example, should be, not overly busy, but busy doing the things of God. We should be doing the things that God has designed for us to do, has put on our heart for us to do. So if that's ministry, if that's working, it's doing whatever we feel called to do according to the words of the Lord or what He's put on our heart for us to be doing. So it's important to be able to say that we're being busy in the Lord. But I would say I'm going to give you a very transparent moment that I just experienced, and you're probably going to giggle when you hear this one because this just happened. Just happened when I was a little too busy. I was on the way home and I stopped at the store to pick up like 3 things. I literally was running in the store and out of the store, and you guys know it's late, so all the stores are closing. And this is a perfect example of being too busy. And I literally had to stop dead in my tracks and like really take in what I had just done, what I would call wrong for what I would consider single women. So I just made this mistake. So I'm sharing this because it happened literally less than an hour ago. Driving home, I go stop in the store to grab 3 things and get out, and so my head was too busy, if that makes any sense. So this is for women, first advice for some women here. I don't want us to get too busy. So I was too busy. I was thinking about my 3 items and getting in and out and going in and out as fast as I possibly could and exiting the store. That's what was on my mind. What was on my mind was not the idea that we need to be ready and prepared and slow enough to receive our partner at any given time. That was not on my mind. But what was on my mind is I need to get in and out of this store as fast as possible to get home. Now, what am I going to hurry up and get home to? I don't know. I hadn't planned on getting online, but that's the thing that happened. And as I was rushing through the store, grabbing my things and getting out. I didn't even grab a basket. I didn't even grab like a hand basket. So I had put the three items in my hand, and I'm like over here juggling and near tumbling. Like I'm juggling. I've got my cell phone in hand. This literally was how I looked. I had my cell phone in hand. I had my ear set, my earbuds in my hand with a wire. So a wire is in one hand, cell phones in another, and in the arm, the crest of my arm, I had my three items. And my three items, and I'm like tumbling around the store, looking crazy. Because did I need to get a big basket? No. Should I have gotten a small basket? Possibly. But I didn't get either. And as I'm tumbling out of the store, I ran into a very tall gentleman, a police officer with one of these big old K9 uniforms. Evidently, he was a special one. So I bump into this police officer who, and by the way, I wasn't intending on having my church playing in the store. I was trying to plug in my cell phone and listen to the church that I was already listening to. But in the midst of all my hurrying up and tumbling and trying to get in the door before they closed, I didn't plug the headset wire into the cell phone. So the church that I was listening to in the car, it would continue to play on my phone as I'm running in and out of the store. So I was trying to tumble around and get my things. My church is playing on the speaker. It was a random weird moment. Like, don't mind me. Don't bump into me in the store. So I bumped into this very tall, attractive police officer, K9 of some sort, and he sees me tumbling around. And what's the first thing he does? Women, please don't do this mistake that I just made. I'm saving y'all. I'm saving y'all right here. Don't do this. Gentleman asked me, "Oh, he's like, oh, you look like you could use a basket." And then I was like, "Oh, no, no. I'm just trying to get in and out of this store." So, boom, shut the guy down just like that. It didn't even hit me in the moment because I literally was only thinking of getting out of the store. But here is this attractive, handsome gentleman who's trying to help me, legitimately help me, which honestly, guys, I did need help. Like I had things tumbling out of my hands. And he's like, "Oh, do you need a basket?" And I was like, "No," because I'm looking at that register. And my thought is, I'm going to get to that register. I'm going to ring out. I'll have a bag when I ring out. This will be fine. So I was like, "Oh, no, I'm fine." So I rush and I get near the register. I'm behind him in the line, and I try to set my things down. So I set my things down kind of at a stand, a table, set my three things on the table, and now I get in the back of the line behind him. So I'm behind him, and now I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my church is playing in the middle of the grocery store, right?" And I take my earbud wire, and I'm like, "Okay, I can plug my thing in and just listen to my church quietly and not be like the big noisy Christian that I kind of am online. I can just be a quiet one in the store right now." And probably he may have been intrigued because you could hear that I was listening to church stuff. But y'all, that wasn't the reason that I wasn't purposely trying to play it out loud. I was just discombobulated. I plug it in, right? So I plug it in. The random. As I'm trying to plug it in, I drop the dongle for the headset. And he hurries up and reaches down to get the dongle and hands it to me. And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." So meanwhile, there's a gentleman on the left side working in the store who's like, "Okay, I'm going to open up this register." Of course, me being like in a rush, I run right around, hop in that register, ring out, and head right on out of there. And it's like as soon as I was actually walking out of the store, and by the way, as I'm ringing up, I look back and he stares at me, I stare at him, and that was our moment. That was our little random moment. And then I head out of the store. And as I'm heading out of the store, it hits me when I had the moment to have a regular conversation with a gentleman. I didn't. He was actually initiating, I didn't receive it. And as soon as I was finally settled, I threw the earbuds in my ear and then shut him off again. And then when I had a chance to hurry up and get out of there, I dipped around, got in the front of the line, took off, rang up, and was literally walking out the door when it hit me. Oh, that's somebody that I could have met. Do you guys hear what I'm saying? So what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say about being ready for marriage? Well, I think we could probably take it back to if we were to look and see what does the Bible say about how we could have done this different and better. Um, I'm going to say it is. Genesis 24. If you look at Genesis 24, it shows a woman how to be ready, but not how to be so busy that you're missing out on opportunities. So I'm gonna pop in here and look at Genesis 24. And this is a story of Isaac and Rebekah. So when Abraham sends out his servant to go find a wife for his son Isaac, the servant goes out, and after some prayer, after a little pep rally at home, servant goes out and he's ready for it. He gets out there and he prays and he says that he wants to find a woman who's going to feed his animals, give him a drink, give his animals a drink, etc. So he wanted a woman who was busy. You guys see that? So busy, but not so overly busy that they're not observing what's going on in the world and responding to the instinct of a man nearby. So she's busy going out, fetching water, but not so busy that she's missing opportunities. See, this is what I did wrong about an hour ago. I was too busy. I was too busy. And there was a perfectly good gentleman right there that I could have met. And by the time it hit me, it was too late, and then my option would have been to, like, turn around, walk back in the store, and say hello, and then actually hit on him, which I'm not really opposed to, but I'm not doing that, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just not doing that. You guys have to feel me on it. But does that make sense? Like, my moment, I had 2 chances. I had the chance when I was walking down the aisle and he said, "Do you need a basket?" I could have literally just said, yes. I could have said, "Yes, yes, I'd like to have a basket." He would have been able to be in position to help me do something, which he was urgently trying to do, right? But again, I was too busy and I wasn't like being a Rebecca in that moment. I was too busy. I was being kind of a Hannah, right? That didn't Hannah meaning my name is Hannah, not Hannah from the Bible. But so that's what we should avoid. And again, when I dropped the dongle and was trying to get the wire back in my phone, he picks it up, hands it to me. Instead of me like, thank you, and saying something else, instead of doing that, I ended up putting the headpiece in my ear, which shut down any opportunity for him to say anything to me because he knows now I'm not listening. So, and all of this hit me as I'm walking out of the store, which is just too late. Yeah, right. I guess it wouldn't have been too late, but I felt the moment had passed and I moved on. So that's a perfect example of things we probably shouldn't do if we're really looking to settle down and we're a woman. We need to be more like Rebecca. Rebecca was out busy doing the things that she needed to do. She was out fetching water, but she had her eyes open and she was paying attention. And so Rebecca, on the other hand, was fetching the water, but paying attention when the servant approaches her to to inquire about her availability. She was able to just kind of gently respond the way she normally would respond. He needed water for his animals, he needed water for himself. You know, she offered without him asking much. She offered to give water to him and to his animals. And when he said, "Hey, is there space at your home?" She turns around and she's like, "Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to have visitors, house guests." So she was ready for house guests. She was automatically nurturing, automatically in the moment, not missing moments, right? She wasn't out there looking for a man, but she was ready to receive a man if he presented himself to her, right? So that's the kind of thing that I'm saying where I feel like we're messing up. We're messing up by having our earbuds in our ear all day. We're messing up by head and phone all the time. When we get out of the house to go do something, I think we need to try to just be aware, have situational awareness the same way when I was out at dinner, I had situational awareness of any kind of crime that could happen when I entered and exited the restaurant. The same way I had a situational awareness around that, but I didn't have situational awareness around the opportunity to meet someone. Does that make sense? So these are mistakes. These are common mistakes I think we're making. We go to certain events as women. Often we go to certain events and we go there with the mindset that this is a place I could meet someone, and so now I'm situationally aware for that gentleman. And guys, and those are the same events where we meet no one. We meet absolutely no one. However, look at the difference. When we're not really expecting it, people are watching, they're listening, and they're looking and they're seeking us. But can we take the earbuds out of our ear, and can we put our cell phone down, and can we be aware, not just for crimes, but can we be aware that our potential partner may be right there in our orbit seeking to find us? And can we be ready to receive him the way that Rebecca was an automatic nurturer? She wasn't like head and cell phone or earbuds in ear. She literally was right there ready to respond to an inquiry. And so that's my question for you. Are you guys ready to respond to the inquiries when they arrive? When they arrive, right? Particularly our women. That, and what was I listening to? I was listening to a gentleman on IG who was preaching, and I cannot think of his name. Um, Gosh, if you post a question in the chat afterwards, I'll go look up his name and find his name. I haven't been watching a lot of that lately, but it came up on my IG. He usually preaches on Sundays and whatnot, but I caught him in the middle of one of his YouTube short segments of preaching, and I wanted to catch him. He's a very young preacher. He's probably in his 20s or early 30s. Very smart guy. I think he's out in Arizona. And he preaches the full gospel. He preaches the real full gospel. He preaches purity and holiness. And he preaches that Jesus saves, right? So yeah, he was preaching tonight, and I was just listening to that and trying to catch that as I grab my things. So that's the mistake that I made. I wasn't in Genesis chapter 24 mode. And that's the mode I would say for women to be in um, when they are seeking a husband. Not necessarily are we running and reaching and pushing for it, but I think if we just um, really allow ourselves to be present in every moment and prepared, meaning put together nicely, right? I was put together decently. I wasn't like looking horrible. I was in the store, wasn't looking horrible, but I wasn't present. So even though someone noticed me, I missed my opportunity right there, right? That's what I'm saying. I think there's probably 5 women who did the same things, 5 women who are listening right now to this live who did the same thing today. And then they're wondering like, "Man, why am I single?" But they're not having that situational awareness for a potential partner. And so that's what I would say with that. So for women, being ready, being busy in the things of God, but not overly busy, ready to receive an inquiry, ready to receive it and ready to respond when the gentleman is offering assistance, even if you don't need the assistance specifically, agree and say yes and begin to start that dialogue because they're looking for opportunities to start dialogue. And either we are receiving that opportunity or we're shutting them down. It's essentially it. And when we're not ready and we're not in the frame of mind that we're getting hit on innocently, because many gentlemen will do that in a respectful way, they'll be doing it innocently. If we're not in the frame of mind that this man is, having an inquiry, trying to start a conversation, grabbing for something to be respectful, but have a beginning because they don't all want to say, "Wow, you're beautiful," or "Wow, I'm interested," or "What's that you're listening to?" They're looking for something to begin that conversation to break the ice. And if we just smile and respond and slow down, it can begin to happen on its own. We don't even have to think that hard. So that's the first thing. So the question for those of you guys who are just hopping in there, we're talking about marriage. I had the question from Mr. Michael on Instagram because we've got Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok going at the moment. But and then Mr. Michael says check your DMs because there are guys in the DMs and they are interested. And I'm gonna agree with you, Mr. Michael. I feel that there's nothing wrong with finding someone in any place that you go, including your online, including your direct messages. If the direct messages are working for you, use them. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different way of finding Mrs. or Mr. Right. If the conversation starts in a DM and it takes off, hey, go for it. It's 2024. What's you gonna do? So I would say that. I would say also, if you look at Genesis chapter 24, I think that those people who are looking for marriage really should try to leverage their community. So their community being people in the faith who can connect you to either events where other single people are, or directly put you in position. Maybe there's like a community barbecue or a friend's barbecue or a friend's gathering or a dinner party, somewhere where you could go and put yourself together and look nice and be presentable and be situationally aware for your potential partner. If you could just get yourself in that position to be there, and that person's there and you're single and they're single, you can have an opportunity for a beginning. So that's what I would say about that. Um, I would say that we are missing opportunities from fellowship, from people that we know, folks setting us up, family members. I mean, look at it in Genesis 24. We see that Isaac found a wife because he basically was introduced to the wife from the servant who went out and found someone appropriate for him. So he didn't do it on his own. He had fellowship, he had a community that helped him do it. I would say and that's about kind of being ready and being prepared. That's to the being ready and being prepared. For men, I think to be ready and be prepared, we have to consider, what does the Bible say is the role of the man in the marriage? I think if we can begin with that, we can kind of begin to assess if the man is ready and prepared. And so the Bible speaks to the man as he's compared to the head of the home. He's kind of like the Christ head of the home. So that means, does he have a relationship with God? That's one way of saying, is he ready? Because guys, we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to be 100% ready for anything in life. That's just how it is. So the best way to be somewhat ready is to say, do I have a relationship with Christ? If I do, then the benefit is, even where there's something that's fragmented or broken or a struggle, um, those are places where God can make you whole and grow you and give you instruction and grow you in such a way that he can make you ready and he can present you as suitable to a partner. So that relationship is going to help develop you. So a relationship with God, yeah, relationship with Christ is one. I think the other thing that the Bible says about a man and his position in the home is, um, spiritually he's the head, right? That's one part. The other role of the man is protector, provider, etc., leader of the home. So when you're being led by Christ, you're going to automatically be able to step into a lot of the leader pieces. In order to be able to protect the home, it means that you'll understand that when you stumble into instances of fear, you have an identity in Christ and you know that you're not fighting. There's not a battle in life that you're going to fight as a man alone, even though with your natural eyes, you're going to feel like you might feel like I'm alone, right? But that's your natural eyes. You have to realize as a man that there is an army behind you, and that is the benefit of you being in Christ. There's an army behind you. There's Jesus at the throne praying for you. So you're not actually in it alone. You're not, even if it feels like you are, you're actually not. That's the other thing. The last piece I would say is the being able to provide. And I don't say that last as if it's not important. It is so incredibly important. So, what did it look like in the Bible when the man was able to provide? What did that look like? Let's talk about it, because it's not like I'm making it up. I mean, this is in Genesis chapter 24. If we go take it right back to Isaac and Rebecca, if you look and you see, what do they say about the man? It basically says that if you go in it, eventually it says that he had all kinds of like gold bracelets, nose ring, this, that. He had all these different things. Um, it says here, Genesis chapter 20, chapter 24, around verse 47. Then I asked her, whose daughter are you? She said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put a ring on her nose and bracelets on her arm. Then I bowed my head and worshiped the Lord and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. You guys see that? So there were things that he was offering. Does that make sense? He had, and it wasn't just that the things, the items that were brought with the servant were what that was being offered. The servant made it clear when he sat down and spoke with the daughter's mom, and I want to say it was the brother. Rebecca had a brother named Laban, and her mom, when they were sitting there, and there was a conversation around should she go ahead and go home with them or not. The conversation went to a negotiation, and before the servant could even eat food with them, he was actually doing the sales pitch. I mean, if you go back and read Genesis chapter 24, you can see that he did a sales pitch. He basically said, "Look, we got a lot of stuff over here. We got a lot of stuff. We're not poor. We got stuff for her. We can take care of her." So if you go back and read, and of course, I'm over here just kind of like skimming through it. But if you go back and read it, it's going to show that that's what the servant was speaking to. He was speaking to what things he had in the home to offer the daughter. It says, and the servant brought out, this is Genesis chapter 24, verse 52. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord. And the servant brought out jewelry of silver and of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. You guys hear this? He also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. You guys see that? So it wasn't that they walked up with nothing to offer and retrieved a woman. They never took a woman and brought a woman into their home for fun first, then made an offer. You guys see that? TikTok, you guys seeing that? The offer came first. The offer came first. And look at the negotiation for the woman. You guys think about it. If this were like a business deal, we would not start our work before we received an offer for compensation. We would not even do that, right? So it's a worldly mindset that we as women would offer our body and do all these things outside of covenant. That's a worldly concept. That's not a biblical concept. The biblical concept is that we would be seen, there would be an inquiry, there was some kind of inquiry about our availability. We would have conversations about what are we doing? What is this? It's okay for us to want to know and get information about what this is. What are we entering? This woman, Rebecca, did not have a situationship. Does that make sense for you guys listening? For everybody who's like dealt with look, guilty, I've dealt with it before, right? I'm not acting like I'm any different. I've dealt with it. That's how I got saved. But that's what I'm saying, y'all. The situationships that we live out in the world that shatter our hearts and break us and damage us and wound us and make us feel that we can't trust people and fail to bring us to permanency when we deeply want permanency, the situationships are not biblical, and they were not what they're not the fullness that God ever had in mind for us as men or women. It's never what God had in mind. What God had in mind is that we would have the safety and security of knowing that we were loved before someone received us, before they received our body, or before we gave of our body, that we would be loved, that we were loved enough to be kept, that we weren't going to get thrown back after somebody got the good stuff, right? That's the biblical world mindset. The biblical mindset is that we don't have to fear rejection in the morning after because we don't know if our performance was good enough. Like the biblical mindset is whatever performance needs working out, the Lord is going to help show and train and teach you how to work out the performance aspect of your new partner who you are new to discovering. We don't have to worry about when we're driving home after the walk of shame. We're not having to worry about did I perform well enough to keep this partner who I liked so much and I wish I could have had permanently, but I was afraid to say that and I didn't negotiate well. The Bible gives us Genesis chapter 24, which says the negotiation comes first, that it's okay to know what we're doing before we do something. It's okay to know that. It's like this idea of not saying the M word, that we can't bring it up to talk about being exclusive, like, can't say that. Like, that being off limits is a worldly mindset that has broken a lot of hearts. It's hurt and wounded many, many people. It's brought many people to suicide, to depression. It's brought many people on their knees. Fortunately, the Lord uses it for good, and many people have gotten saved after coming to their knees, right? But I will say, it's the kind of thing that that makes us feel wounded. So when we talk about what is the ideal scenario for marriage, the ideal scenario is that, you know, the men are coming prepared to be able to protect, to provide something. They're coming with some level of finances together. A man does not have to be rich, but you have some level of finances together. You have something to offer the woman. You have some place to lay. She has some place to lay her head. You're offering her something. You physically can offer her something in the moment, so that when she goes home with you, that she's got a guarantee that yes, you have more than that. Because that's what it says here in Genesis chapter 24. He offered her on the spot ornaments and bracelets and a nose ring and all these jewelries, offered her brother things, right? On the spot, offered things, and basically mentioned, this is not all that we have. We are a family that has something at home. We can actually care for her properly. And so the negotiation happened before she went home with him. Before she went home, the negotiation happened. And I'm going to tell you, the world is anti Genesis chapter 24, because the world tries to convince women that we can't understand what we're getting into before we get into it. The world tries to shape us to make us feel that asking questions is unacceptable and it makes us difficult, and um, just, just participate, just move forward and figure it out as you go. But that's not actually what Genesis chapter 24 tells us. So I would just caution everyone, because like I said, I've been there. I've, had my situations that I've had to like recover from and redeem myself from. And that's the hard part, right? That's the hard part. A lot of people are getting saved from those situations. So the Lord will turn it around for good. But I will tell you, it's no small task to try to get healed from the brokenness that comes from doing it outside of God's plan, which is perfectly safe and secure. That's what I would say. The other thing that I would mention about the biblical role of man, like I said, the biblical role of a man is to provide as well. So I do think that there is room to grow where we see there's nothing wrong with women working and having like bringing in income and doing well for themselves. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think there is something to say about it when the man's not able to put the roof over the head or contribute in the household. I think at the very minimum, when you look at what happened in Genesis chapter 24, the woman didn't go home with the man unless there was something to go home to. She didn't just leave her father's home to go home with a new man who had nowhere for her to lay her head and nothing for her to do. She wouldn't have gone. She wouldn't have left her father's home. Does that make sense? Her father wouldn't have let her go, right? It would have been like, why are we going to let you go with him? You're better here. You're better off here. I think the other part of that is the waiting game is not something that they did in the biblical time. They didn't say, oh, wow, I need to wait until I've traveled or partied or dated 10 people or slept with this number. The Bible didn't say for us to test everyone out, and that was how we got ourselves ready for the marriage. The Bible, at a certain age, when you were of age and you were fertile, you were settling down. So I think that is in the worldly mindset something that we're missing. I think in general we're waiting too long. And I think if we look back in the olden days when people got married and stayed married, a lot of them got married right after high school, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think nowadays we think, oh, wow, that's so young because, the maturity level of someone 18 on average, right? But I think that it's something that we probably need to reimagine. Like, what should it look like for someone to settle down and get married? Because I can tell you at 18, what most are doing, not all, a lot of them. I wouldn't even say most. I will say a lot of people at 18 are considering it normal behavior to casually date. That's become normal. I will say that. Casual dating with no intention of settling down has been very normalized as and accepted as a practice between 18 and 32, I will say. It's become, and you guys think about that, between 18 and 32, the world says casual dating with no intention, meaning no plan specifically for marriage, just checking people out. That's become normalized between 18 and 32. And there are serious repercussions to participating in the worldly pathway to settling down. So in the biblical time, if you were 18, you were probably already had a baby by then. You probably were married, had yourself one, maybe two kids by then at 18. Now we fast forward to 2024 at 18, people are, just beginning their dating journey. Maybe they started at 16, maybe they started at 18, maybe they started younger than that. But the mindset has been casual. It was never that, okay, I want to keep this person forever. I want to get to know them so that's to see if I could keep them forever. The mindset has become, I would like to get to know them to see what I like, to see if I like, to try it out. Kind of like the whole Baskin Robbins effect, right? That's become the mindset. And that's actually rather dangerous. I will say it's dangerous for women on one hand, and it's dangerous for men as well. It's dangerous for women because on the side of women, I don't make the rules, guys. When you're 18 to 25, those are some valuable years. Ask the men who are 40 who are looking for someone to date. Ask the men who are 45 and 50 looking for someone to date. When you've got a woman who's 18 to 25, guess what? 18 to 25-year-old woman can easily date someone her age. But guess what? 18 to 25-year-old woman can easily date someone who's 28 to 32. Guess what? 18 to 25-year-old woman can easily date someone who's 40 years old. Guess what? 18 to 25-year-old woman can easily date somebody who's 50 or 55, y'all. This is what I'm saying. And the world's not going to tell you this truth. They're not going to tell you. But that frame, that space of time, 18 to 25, is such a crucial time for a woman because her fertility is strong. Fertility is going strong. So if she's interested in having a family, these are ideal times for settling down and procreating. This is an eventful time in her fertility where it's going to probably be easy for her to likely reproduce on a timely frequency in a way that's going to be useful to most men who are seeking marriage. That's one. I think the other part of it is like again, I don't make the rules. It's not my idea, but certainly because women at that age range can date men at multiple decades. They can date men their age in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. They tend to do that. And when men are getting ready to settle down, I can't tell you how often they dip into the lower age range to grab someone and settle down. I can't tell you how often they do it. They don't always do it, but they do it often enough. Often enough that I can see that trend. And I would say that for women, it becomes a little more tricky to settle down. Not saying it's impossible, it's certainly possible, but certainly considering if you're 32, guess what you have now? You're working against your fertility slowing down. The world doesn't want to tell you that, but you're working against your fertility slowing down, which is problem number one. Not saying it's stopped, but certainly for many people, it's beginning to slow down And we're also working against the competition factor that when you're 32, you're not 25. So you're not 25 and you're mature, and that's a good thing, right? You're more mentally ready for marriage. You're more sure. You understand what's good and bad. You've got that comparison going. But on the opposite side of it, now when you get ready to get in that dating pool to date and you're dating, guess what? Guess what the 32-year-old woman doesn't have access to as often? She doesn't have access to the men that are 20 to 30 in general. I'm not saying that's never. I'm saying in general, those guys are now going to be outside of her ability to catch or for her to receive, right? That's how it is. I don't make the rules again. So she's losing options. She's losing a decade worth of options right there. And now she's 32 and the fertility is starting to adjust, right? So those are real issues and the world doesn't want to talk about that. So if that 32-year-old woman happens to get married in a year or two, great. Now she's starting to work on having her kids. Some of them are having their kids and it's perfectly easy and fine. Others of them are struggling. These are real things. And when you think about it, what did the Bible, taking it back to the Bible, what's the time frame for the Bible? Look and see what happened. Look at how when you look at the story of I wanna say it was Laban who had the 2 girls that he was trying to marry off, and he snuck in there and he put the older daughter in and marry off the older daughter first. Why? Because he's like, "I gotta get her out of the house. I can't have her getting old on me." Do you guys see that? So, the Bible was sensitive to this aging factor in a way that they didn't play around with the idea of a woman aging. They didn't do that. So I find from a worldly mindset, there's a lot of this fiddling around with it business where we think that we're gonna party from 18 to 25, that we're gonna travel, we're gonna work from 25 to 28, collect some money, and we're gonna just go hard and travel from like 26 to like 32, and then we're gonna okay, now I'm gonna get married. As if we're picking the guy. As if we're picking the guy, guys. We're not picking the guy. We're saying that as if we can have control over, like, hit the bell and then boyfriend's coming up, I'm gonna become husband now. We say that as if we're gonna pick the guy when we're not actually picking the guy. The guy is picking us. He's inquiring about us. He's inquiring about us for the future, not the other way around, right? He's proposing to us, not the other way around. So I think timing is also a factor specifically for women. I don't think that it's as much of a factor for men, but it's still a factor. I think it's a much more heavy factor for women because our fertility depends on it, which is a factor in men selecting, right? And then there's just the idea that there's more competition. The longer you wait, there's more competition. The longer a woman's waiting, then there's a pool of men that she's got to kind of release herself from because their interest is not going to be there. There's going to be lack of interest from people that are probably younger than her. Even if she's interested and willing, there may be lack of interest there. So those people are really no longer in her pool. And that's the part we have to really consider is as we get older, there's a SWAT of people that are no longer in our pool. And then we're dating what's left out of the candidates because there are candidates who are marrying out and then there's what's left in the pool. There's other people marrying out and that's what's left in the pool. And then a few are coming back in through their divorces. Few are coming back in, but those who are coming back in may not be ready to get married again, or they're not positioned well financially to get married again. Now they don't have the things to offer this time around. They don't have anything to offer. So those become issues. So what I would say is I think people that are 18 to 25 really should be thinking about settling down and getting married. They really should be considering that. They really should be thinking about it because they don't have a lot of emotional wounds. That's number 1. And lack of emotional wounds is a good thing that being fresh and being brand new and being able to take into your marriage the least amount of baggage is a good thing. Not saying that you can't make it through it, but that's a good thing. That's a lighter weight and it's likely that you can manage growing together because you're young and you're new and you're still nimble. Whereas I'll tell you, at 45, it's a lot harder to flex just adjust things. It's just harder. You gotten used to being, I've been single for 20 years. I've gotten used to being single. It's hard. It's hard to partner. It's easy to be single. It's easy now. That part I got used to it. And I know a lot of people who probably think just like me. Like, oh man, I got used to being single. It's easy now. It's hard to be with somebody, but easy to be single. So we don't want that to start to take shape. Where I remember when it was easy to be with someone and hard to be single. Now it's easy to be single. And that's a problem if you absolutely want to get married in the future. So I think for the men, we have to think about the biblical role. Think about like the role of overseer over a family, right? Like in some respect, the man is the spiritual head of the home. So he needs to be ready to be an overseer spiritually for the home. So I can't say how important it is when we think about men, when we think about an intruder coming in the home, we often think about making sure we have our guns blazing, we're ready in case someone is a physical intruder, but we need to remember that as soon as we get married, there will likely be a spiritual intruder of some kind, be it man or woman trying to come against the marriage. It could be just spiritual attacks. It could be childhood related things that are coming back and bring the marriage to its knees. A lot of people struggle with intimacy from their childhood issues that suddenly show up. Those childhood issues never seem to show up when we're single and casually dating and fooling around with situationships. But as soon as we get in covenant, you see how those childhood issues rear their ugly head and 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 start to disable the relationship in different ways. That happens to people, and that is nothing but an attack from the enemy. I'm going to tell you, because when you're single and you're fornicating and you're in sin, the devil's loving it. He's not going to put an attack to try to stop you from that. But wait till you get in covenant. The minute you get in covenant, the devil is going to be coming, bringing up things from your past, bringing up all these soul ties or things from your past or childhood trauma, bringing up relationships that didn't work, that are kind of just feeding in and kind of trying to destroy your marriage, trying to confuse you with priorities, trying to make the woman think that her friends are more important than her husband, or trying to make the man think that they're outside and things that are, idolatrous things are more important than the wife. You know, those are attacks on the marriage. Actually, they are full on attacks. So, there are those aspects, and I would say there's this imbalance now of there's the feminism, which is it's important for women to be able nowadays to vote, educate themselves, feed themselves, survive, right? But there needs to be this balance of being able to like lean into your femininity, which I think in our need to, vote, educate, feed ourselves, etc., grow, as an independent woman, we have those things together. But when it becomes an idol, right? When we start to take our identity and place our identity in being a career woman, right? I think that's different from using your career to feed yourself and shelter yourself and provide for yourself. I think when your career becomes your identity, and when someone says, tell me about yourself, and the first thought is you begin to give your job description or your title or, those kinds of things. I think we're looking at our career becoming an idol, and idolatry, and the pride that comes with that. It can destroy a woman's ability to be nurturing in a marriage relationship. It can destroy that. It can destroy it before it even begins. It can make us less desirable. The same way I was in the store and I didn't need anything, that made me less desirable in the moment, right? Like somebody was looking to help me do something and I was like, "Oh, I got it." You know, that's what I mean. That's an automatic reaction now that women have to actually fight. We've got to fight off this independence that we picked up from Eve. We've got to fight that off and pray through that piece where we're so independent that we're not situationally aware to receive our husbands, or we're not able to maintain the good relationships that God has given us because we are gravitating toward I can do that. I can do that too. I can do that for myself. So it's a balance. It's a balance of us women letting go of some of that authority that we naturally had to have in order to survive for so many years. And it's the balance of the men stepping into holding more weight, the weight that, to be quite honest with you, a lot of us don't really want to carry anyway. We don't like to say it out loud, but no, we don't want to carry all that weight. It's too heavy. Does that make sense? So it's that balance. Um, Now, the question that Mr. Michael had was a good one. The question was, um, how do we know if we're prepared? How do we know if we're ready? It's different from, so preparation would mean, for the man, it would mean, you've got a relationship with Jesus Christ. It's a sanctification process, right? So you're not going to be perfect just because you have a relationship with Jesus. You're not going to walk around perfect, but you have a relationship with Him. You have a prayer life. You know when you're under attack, and you know when you're not under attack. You know when you're in your flesh. I think for a man, if you can identify when you are in the flesh, that's a good thing because you'll know that this is something that I need to pray and ask God to help me turn down this flesh. Being in the flesh, meaning I'm getting angry. I'm aware that I'm getting angry. Somebody's getting under my skin. And you can't fight that alone because you will be defeated if you fight something like that alone. You got testosterone and hormones, and sometimes people give you good reason to get pretty darn mad. So you're praying, you're saying, whoa, I feel like I'm in my flesh. That's when you have a relationship with Christ, you're going to God and you're praying through that. You're like, oh, God. See, when you know you're in your flesh, then you can go to Jesus and say, Jesus, I know right now I'm in my flesh and I need help with that. I need help in this moment to stay calm. We will work out breaking it off later. I need help in this moment to react in a way that's godly, that represents you, that represents your kingdom. You get on your knees and you say that in the middle of a moment. You take 10 seconds and take a deep breath and say that, and watch what God will do to help you control your instant masculine reactions to situations. And some of those reactions can be troublesome for those around you and for yourself. Right. So knowing when you're in your flesh is big. Being in your flesh can mean, a person who's, falling and addicted to porn, falling into that, falling into kind of being sidetracked by another pretty girl every time somebody walks past, and desiring for them. I'm not talking about attraction because I mean, people are pretty and they're attractive and you will be attracted, right? You'll be like, she's good looking. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like that deep desire for every woman or where you can't stay focused on one. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about it going from I have a girl, she's a good girl. I would love to move forward with her to oop, squirrel. I see another one. She's pretty. I like to undress her. Like I'm talking about that deep thing where you keep getting distracted. Cause see that is an attack. It's an attack that we have to work with God to help us get relief from. Because that distraction will be there when you get married too. And I'm not saying that you should never get married because you have that. You just need to know that you're in your flesh and know that this is the time you need to pray. You know, um, I'm a firm believer that you need to pray when you don't think there's anything wrong, but you also need to be aware that while I'm in my flesh or I'm under attack or X, Y, and Z, or I just want to thank the Lord. I just want to thank Him. Knowing that and being able to step into those kinds of moments of prayer, I think are so useful because as a spiritual head of the home, you're not going to get it all right. But if you know when to pray and you know how to lead the family towards prayer and towards Christ, there's nothing that you can't accomplish. That's the reality is that you will fall short. Like that's the thing that people who've been married for 40 and 50 years can tell you already that there's many times where they wanted to divorce, where they wanted to leave one another, where they thought it was over, they thought this person's not redeemable, but God helped them see that person the way God sees them. In their imperfection, God sees them as righteous because of the blood of Jesus. God sees them as righteous even though they cheated. God still sees them as righteous when they have a relationship with God. God sees them declared as righteous, holy, and pure despite their errors because of what Jesus did on the cross. That's how God sees them. You guys see that? So God does not see us with the smut covered all over us because of our ridiculous level of wickedness and sin. He does not see us that way. He keeps taking us back because of that good old blood of Jesus. That's why. So how in being in a marriage, that's what we're preparing ourselves for. We're preparing ourselves for the type of covenant that can withstand the imperfections of a man. We're standing on the fact that I married someone who's broken, wounded, imperfect, who falls short every day, and I'm gonna step into every time I get mad, I'm gonna go to God. Just go tell on him, "God," like a 3-year-old, "God," go tell on him, and I watch how God shows you something about yourself when you go tell on him. Just go tell on him, and God's gonna keep showing you a mirror. Every time you go tell on your wife or your husband, God's gonna give you a mirror and say, look at you." And then you're gonna get real quiet, and you're gonna feel some conviction, and you'll be able to walk back in the room with your partner and acknowledge your part in it and say, "You know what? I can forgive you. I can forgive you because God has forgiven me a million times. I can forgive you 70 times more. I can forgive you. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it." That's what I'm saying. So being ready for marriage, tactically ready for marriage as a man is you have a prayer life. You know when you're under attack. You know when you're in the flesh, and you have a heart that's not vengeful but ready to forgive. In a heart, I would say, even a man who's prepared for marriage is a man who's willing to work with a woman who needs to be molded into a more perfect woman, because the woman that's presenting herself in the dating scenario is still a woman who's trying to present her best. But inside of that shell, there is a woman who's been through things and has been wounded by the world. Maybe she's been wounded through childhood trauma. Likely she has. If she hasn't, don't forget, like, 1 in 4 women has been sexually assaulted. So likely, if she didn't have childhood trauma, likely she's been sexually assaulted. And she may not have told you that. We don't walk around talking about all the times that we've been sexually assaulted. Trust me, I have been. So there have been women out there that have been sexually assaulted. So they're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that they've been sexually assaulted multiple times and that they've got what feels like a little PTSD that they work through from time to time that percolates up. But being the man means being that place of safety and security, that you can be nimble and flexible when she has a moment where something pops into her mind and she hasn't gotten it captive yet. You're being gentle with her in those moments because you're anticipating that as a woman that's likely happened. Even if she hasn't told you that that's likely happened, that she's had an incident where she was afraid for her health or her life or her well-being, and that was at the hand of a man who should have been there to protect her versus hurt her and wound her. But being able to, like, "Oh, you're thank you, Mr. Michael." But being able as a man to, step into that and be like, "Wow, you know what? I'm going to protect her. I'm gonna anticipate that this is a moment where it seems like she needs protection." That's what I mean. I mean stuff like that. So, I'm talking about this from the perspective of, anticipating a woman having some level of brokenness inside of there and being ready to receive her and give her the kind of comfort that makes her want to open up, it makes her want to share again. Because it's probably going to be kind of an unraveling over many years that, at some point, a couple of years down the road, she'll be like, "Oh, this happened," or, "This happened to me," or this makes me feel this way, and how you receive that matters. And vice versa. I think women have to also remember that many men have been victims of something. It could be aggression, it could be assault, it could be child molestation. These things are happening nowadays because women have become independent and aggressive, even towards young children that are male, and the world has told them that whatever bad things that are happening or have happened, that they may or should have enjoyed that. And so there are a lot of men who've been victimized quietly and been told that this is normal and that you should like it. And there are wounds there that they haven't processed, they haven't sought help on, they haven't healed from. And it starts to percolate up in the marriage itself. So for women, when they're seeing that the man's been through that, it's just super duper important that we think about the women who've come to us in those moments, and we are as gentle and nurturing towards our men as we were towards women who were victimized. And we kind of take that off and think about, wow, this is like, think of a small boy who's been through something but just has big muscles and he got taller. Inside of that wounded man is still the small child who got muscles. He's still in that moment when he's sharing that softness, that difficulty. He is that 3 or 5 or 7-year-old child who's wounded. He's that person when he's sharing about his difficulty. And that's the kind of gentleness that you approach him with in the moment that he shares that something happened. The gentleness has to be the gentleness that you would give a 3-year-old or 4-year-old or 5-year-old that shared that with you. That's the sensitivity that we have to move with. And a man that feels safe and nurtured in that moment, in moments after, years after, that's a man who's never going to leave. He's never going to go anywhere because he knows that's home. He knows it's home, even if you make a mistake and you fall short, but he knows that that nurturing nature, that safe place where the worst of the worst he can say, and you're still gonna love and be there and care. When he knows that that's a safe place, he's not going anywhere. He's staying there. He's in for life. He's doing life with you. Does that make sense? Uh, that's interesting. TikTok does weird stuff. After a certain amount of time, it just goes off. So yeah, sorry if I lost my TikTok people. It does weird stuff over there, so we'll leave it. But yeah, so today we were talking about marriage. We were talking about being prepared for marriage and if we are ready for marriage. We were talking about that. So I hope that answered your question, Mr. Michael. I mean, I will say this, when it comes down to the issues of the practical things, like the practical side of the fact that we have a battle with like lust, sexual morality, like these are real battles that happen to men and women both, right? We're talking about the practical side of what happens. I would say, hey Robin, I think that might be Robin from my old Facebook. If that's you, hey Robin. Um, I would say the practical side of the fact that there is a battle against sexual immorality, pornography, lust, all those things. It's complicated, but I would say that because I think some people would say, "Well, can I move forward with marriage when I've got these battles?" I think a couple of things. I think number 1, whatever battles that you know you have, I think you need to have a partner who you can share those battles with. That's what I would say. I don't know that it's wise for us to think that we're gonna enter a marriage, like, perfect. Like, literally in our fleshly body, where, like, we've fully resolved all the things that we carried our whole lives. I don't even know if that's practical. I think in our sanctification process, God is working on us and growing us and building us up and showing us things and revealing things to us, and we have to trust that process. I don't necessarily think that should hinder us from being able to settle down and get married, but I do think that the honorable thing to do is if you have a struggle, if you're struggling in with porn, lust, masturbation, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. Like whatever a guy or a woman, could be a woman, right? Whatever the individual childhood trauma, right? PTSD, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, whatever the thing is that we struggle with, I think long before you're married, I think it should be on the table. Like take your bag of stuff and put it on the table and begin to sort through it. Because I think if we're talking about like a partnership, don't forget the Bible says when you are married to become one flesh, one. So if you're trying to get to a place where you're trying to get to forever with a person, I think it's smart, wise, and reasonable to do exactly opposite of what the world says. The world's gonna say, "Don't tell them that part. Shh, don't say that. Don't tell them all that." The world's gonna say, "Don't share things and keep things from your partner." But I think there's trouble behind that because our partner is that's our team. That's our team. And if we're looking at what the Bible says, they are you're a union. You are together. You are one. So the question would be is can you take it out of yourself? All those things that you're struggling with, can you just take it and set it on a table and walk away? No, you can't. You've been carrying those things with you, right? So if you're gonna be carrying stuff in a backpack, I think what's smart and wise is if you haven't been able to put all the things down, and tidy them up, I think if you can like open up your backpack and have a moment where you sit down with your partner and maybe it's not the first week that you get married. Maybe it's not that first week, but when you are in those moments that you're talking about your forever and your future, I think it's important for everybody to take their backpack off of their back, open it up in front of each other, and begin to sort through it and to start pointing things out that are in your backpack, things that you're carrying, and say, "Look, I just want to," and it doesn't happen all in one day. It's not like you're in like a retreat and you just take the backpack out and you just pull all the stuff out. I'm talking about being wise about it, and in the moments where you feel led, take an item out of the backpack and share it with your partner. And what I want you to do when you're doing that is you're testing. The Bible says test every spirit to see whether they are of God, right? So you're taking some of your heavy things out and you're sharing them with your partner. You want to see what is their automatic reaction to that thing. You wanna see what is their long-term reaction. People are gonna have weird reactions to new stuff that they weren't expecting. Some of them are gonna have this, like, kinda like stone cold, blanked out face. Some of them might start to cry because they feel the hurt that you felt in those moments. Other people are gonna try to fix it. Some people, there are gonna be a variety of brand new reactions to something that's heavy that you put on the table. But you wanna see, can you trust them with it? Are you gonna be able to trust them with the heavy things, not just the good things, but the heavy things? And likewise, with your hopes and dreams, I want you to take that out your backpack and one by one lay those things out on the table because you wanna be able to see, like, I dated somebody who was not supportive of my hopes and dreams. Didn't work out. It didn't work out, guys. You guys see that? It didn't work out, but they were not good person. They were not supportive of my hopes and dreams. Does that make sense? So what am I gonna do with this person when like God's given me a calling for 1, 2, 3, and they're like checked out of my hopes and dreams? That is think about it. Think about why God placed you here. And can you really honor God in that relationship if the person is completely anti your hopes and dreams? Like it just doesn't work out that well, right? So I would say take out the good things and the bad things out that backpack one by one and be able to talk about it and see and as you're putting it out there, you want to just be able to see how do they respond to that? Are they and what are you looking for? What values are you looking for in your partner? Goes beyond beauty and beyond like the six pack. This goes into when you're having a moment where you come home and you need somebody, or you're in a hospital and you're sick and you need somebody, you're trying to figure out like where are they today and how are they going to grow into it. So their immediate reaction, maybe that's how they respond to a crisis or immediate things, but that doesn't mean they'll always respond that way. And it doesn't mean that they won't grow into being able to respond in ways that are useful to you as well. So, over time, share like, um, when I give you something that's heavy, this is something that I might need when I give you something that's heavy, sometimes I just want you to listen. And sometimes, and you might say, I want your ideas of how to fix it. You put something out there and maybe you say, I'm going to put this out here, not for us to solve today, just because I want you to know. I think it's an important thing for you to know. We can try to solve for it a different year. That might be helpful, particularly if you're dating somebody who's a fixer. If they like to fix things and resolve things, then it's hard for them when you put something on their plate, but you're telling them don't fix it, but you haven't given them that information. So I think it's important to give information and say what you want someone to do with it. Hey, I just want to share this. This is not like, I don't think we need to take an action on it. I just want to share it and I want to put it out there because I want you to know me more. I want you to get a sense for the hardships so that it's something that maybe in the future, we would have better connectivity, or maybe you'd be able to help me in the future. You know, I think those things are important. I honestly, I don't think that we just come all prepackaged, baked, and perfect. I don't think it's necessarily useful to wait for someone to be perfect either. I think that's what the Christ part is for. That's my opinion. My opinion is if they're in a position where they're like a dangerous kind of thing, then that's something that probably needs some work alone, right? But when you're just talking about you're on your sanctification process and you get tempted in X, Y, and Z way, or you struggle in the late night hours with X, Y, and Z thing, I think those are things that you're honest with your partner about. Because you know what? If you're honest with it in the beginning, then it takes some strength away from the devil. So the devil is looking for an opportunity to get you cornered, get you caught, and then condemn you and shame you while you're in that corner. So the devil wants you to get caught up in like a wicked moment where your partner's not expecting it, where they don't really know how to react. They don't even know that's your struggle, meaning your partner's not even praying for you in that area. That's what the devil wants. He doesn't want you to have shared enough to where your partner has hedged you up in prayer. He doesn't want you to share enough to where your partner understands the root behind that, because the root behind the thing is what helps your partner forgive you. And sometimes it might be that you need deliverance. You know, all of these things are true. And maybe that's the area where you and your partner spend time every week praying in those areas, reading the Bible, reading scriptures that are helpful in those specific areas. That is the purpose of talking about it. You're talking about it because once you know the issue, that becomes a prayer point. It's not a gossip point, it's a prayer point where you can like sit down and say, we're going to work through this together. This is the part we're going to work through. That's what I think you do with it. Um that's what I think you can do with it. I think it's useful to do that. I'm not one who thinks people need to be perfect when they get married. I actually don't think, because no matter how good you think you are, that's your perception. You probably still need a lot of work. That's how I see myself. No matter how good you think you are, you might think you're pretty good, but your partner hasn't been with you from the beginning. So for your lifespan, you may have come a long way and you're pretty good as far as your perception, but your partner only has been there for the last few years, so they're still adjusting to all these things that you are still holding on to or still dealing with. They're still adjusting. So to their eyes, you're not perfect. So I don't think you should wait on getting married because you're not perfect. I think where you're imperfect, you put it on the table, you pray about it, you seek God on it regularly, and your marriage begins to hedge you up in a way that you didn't have protection as a single person. So it becomes another iron fence for the devil to have to penetrate in order to get to you. So that's a value, right? So if you were single, you're just struggling with those same things all by yourself. And without a prayer circle, without a Bible study group, without a church fellowship, without godly friends, then you're just out there fighting and swinging, you and Jesus, right? But you don't have like that community. But the marriage actually gives you a built-in community. So I would say put it out there on the table, and I would say still get married. I would say still get married. I think it comes down to what happens is when it's on the table, and it's on the table long before you decide to propose, and it's on the table long before the woman says yes, everybody's aware of the issues, and it becomes more real, if that makes any sense. Everything becomes more real. And I think also the devil likes to work in the darkness. He doesn't want to work in the light. He wants to be able to sneak, hide, and deceive. And the Bible actually talks about the fact that we should confess our sins to one another. It goes back to that. So when I say confessing your sins or confessing your issues or the difficulties, the things that you have on your back, when we're putting that stuff from your book sack on the table for your partner, when you're doing that, it's taking an opportunity away from the devil to use what he usually uses against you to get you cornered. By you putting it on the table, you're taking it out of the darkness. And A, it makes you more accountable, but B, it there's something that's gonna happen with your partner that it's gonna A, help you know if it's the right person. And you need to know that. You need to know, is this a person who can do life with you given your backpack? It's as simple as that because you're not perfect. You're taking that backpack in that marriage. I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could all like walk down the aisle, take our backpack off, put it outside the church, walk down the aisle, and leave it out there? Would be nice. That's not how it works. Absolutely not how it works. So, that's what I think. Welcome, welcome. But yeah, that's what I think. So for those of you guys who hopped in there, we were talking about marriage tonight, and we were talking about being ready for marriage and like the difference between like being prepared and actually being ready. So I think in the simplest of terms, as a woman, if you understand the role biblically of a woman, which is to be able to be the helper, that's the biblical role of the woman, is not to head the household, but to be the helper for the household. So as a woman, if you know that, and that's true whether you are of childbearing age or not. If you're not of childbearing age, you can still be a helper to the household. Um, but knowing that your role is to help but not lead, that's important because if you understand your role, then in the dating perspective, the woman needs to assess for whether she's stepping outside of her biblical role, yes or no. And that's what I would say to women. Like, this is a serious thing. When you, in the dating aspect, find yourself in the position where you start to lead, y'all, Imma tell you, 10 times out of 10, it's not gonna work. When you find yourself, it's not because it can't work for a short time. It can. It can work for a short period of time where the woman is leading and the man is following because at least you got like two opposing things, right? It can work for a short period of time, but you have to look at what the Bible says about each person's role. And it is it's off. It's lopsided. It's not biblical. So if the woman is leading in every aspect, and that doesn't mean that we can't lead in some aspects. Like, when you guys sit down and have your relationship talks, you can sit down and talk about, well, maybe the man's not good with paying the bills on time, but he's good at bringing the money in. He may say, I delegate you to, type in the bills and I'll just bring the money in, put it in the bank. That's perfectly fine. That's still being a helper. That makes sense. That's being a helper. What I'm saying is when the woman begins to actually head the household, and she can figure that out from dating, y'all. You can figure it out when, perfect example, you go to the grocery store and you're always pulling out your credit card paying for the groceries and your man's standing right there and letting you do it. you're getting out of your role right there. There you go, right there. If you're gonna go home, cook the food, prepare the food, clean the kitchen, all that, excellent. But if you're also in the store, he's standing right there and you're paying for the groceries every time, paying every time, all the time. That's a trend. I mean, I'm not gonna point out onesie twosies. I'm never gonna do that. I'm gonna point out the trend. The trend is if more 9 times out of 10, you're doing all the thing, I would say it's usually sustainable for short term because you already got a situation where you're leading and he's following. So it can work for some time, but what happens over time is it's not the biblical role. So there's fallout from that. Over time, we can do it. We actually can do it for some time, but at some point let the stressors of work start to get too heavy. Let the kids start to misbehave some. Let finances start to get too tight, or you have a few unexpected events financially that put you guys in a pinch. Let all those things that the world start crumbling. The world as it's comfortable today. Let the world that's comfortable today crumble and you get like a 30K bill in the mail that has to come through and you're over here trying to make it. Just, your finances are pushing everything forward. Let that happen. Let that happen. And I want to count how long it takes before everything unravels. And here's why. It's because once you have that weight, it's not the everyday, oh, okay, everything's going. It's when that weight actually shows up, that real weight that women are not meant to bear. Biblically, we're not meant to bear it. We can do for some time. Anybody can do anything for a few years. And that's not a question. I'm talking about when you know what hits the ceiling. I'm talking about when it hits the ceiling and you're like, I need help. I need help. I need somebody to get up in here and jam with me. When it hits the ceiling and you're stuck, when you get into that point where you're stuck and you're like, why is he standing here and not helping? Why is he not doing it with me? Why is it not like the partnership? Where is my 50-50 where I got a partner helping me do it? When you get to that point where it is tense because you are cornered and you don't have what you need, then you are instantly going to feel like I need someone to help me. Like I need someone to be covering me. When I say help, I mean that's when you're even if you never felt it for 5 years or 7, it is when what hits the ceiling and you look up and you're like, I need a covering. I need something. I need something. And you look up and you're like, he's not. I'm telling you, after 5 or 7 years, that relationship has gotten steady state with the way that it is. And it's very hard to like get that thing adjusted back biblically. It's hard. It's not impossible. It's hard. It takes both people and God, right? It's so lopsided. It's very difficult to recover. Furthermore, the man in that same moment, when he does get the conviction and he realizes it's lopsided, it's such an emasculating feeling for the man that's actually hard for him to recover. It's easier for him to find someone who he can lead. Now he feels this feeling like I want to lead. I want to actually lead. I want to be able to do these things. He's going to actually more than likely be more interested in someone who he can just naturally lead, where he can just have a fresh beginning where he's leading and they're following versus having the lopsided thing. It's very difficult to recover from it. I would just say it's difficult to recover. It can be recovered. It's difficult. It's so backwards that the tensions naturally come because no man wants to feel like he isn't providing. No man wants to feel like that. And then the woman doesn't want to feel the weight of the world all the time. She can manage it to some extent, but when everything hits the ceiling, and then she's been dealing with it, what feels like on her own, that resentfulness can start to build up and that nurturing thing starts to dwindle. And see, that is the light in the home. The light that's in the home is that nurturing part that woman is providing. And under the weight of the world stress, it dampens that nurturing light. That's what happens. And when that light is gone, the man is beginning to seek outside. It just happens because it's out of God's order. That's why. That's why. So I would say it's and watch who the guy goes to get. He finds someone who does less, has less because she's in her femininity, because he needs someone in the home that's the light, because that builds him up. That's what it's doing. Um Mr. Michael says he's thinking of the episode of Sister Sister when you take care of the egg and I'll bring home the bacon. Yep, yep, yep. I see you guys. I see you guys. So yeah, that's what I mean. Leslie says a man needs to lead the way, period. No female should be in her masculine in a relationship. See, this is the hard part about this conversation around being in the woman being in her femininity versus the man being in his masculine role. The tough part about what I see with this conversation is I often will see the world will start talking about how how the males are only looking for women to be in their femininity, right? But everything in the world is so backwards that it's hard for the woman just to be in her femininity right now. I think in the worldly aspect, it's just hard. Um, because it's so many things are opposite. So many things are opposite. So many the thing that allows the woman to like lean in her femininity is the safe space that she's walking into permanency. I'm gonna tell you, that is the first way to get a woman to lean into her femininity is when she feels security that she's not gonna get dropped off and dumped off and ditched and deleted tomorrow. When she in the back of her head is wondering, "Is she gonna get a call tomorrow? Is she still gonna be loved tomorrow? Is she gonna be liked tomorrow? Is she gonna be valued tomorrow?" When she's wondering that, and she doesn't have the sense of there's some permanency here, when she doesn't know what to expect out of the tomorrows, it makes her tighten up. It makes her tighten up. That's what it does, and over a period of time, you're like as the man, you're like, "Why won't you loosen up?" And she's thinking, "Why don't I know what we're doing?" It's as simple as that. It's as simple as lack of direction for the woman causes serious anxiety in the woman's head. She may not tell you that, but the way she'll communicate that level of anxiety in her head that she doesn't know what's happening is she may withdraw intimacy because she's uncertain about you because she feels that you're uncertain about her. Immediately she withdraws those things, right? She'll withdraw things like the nurturing, the softness, the sweetness in her voice begins to diminish because she's worried, and that worry makes her snappy and sharp. That's what it does. I'm gonna tell you what it does. And when the woman is feeling super duper secure, like everything is taken care of, she didn't have anything to worry about, that's what positions her to be like so peaceful. Like you guys don't know what it's like that's peacefulness in her head. I'm gonna tell you, I haven't been peaceful in my head like that in decades. I'm gonna tell you, it's very, very hard to get that. It's the way the world has made women. So we see a lot of guys who are like going overseas to find a bride, all those things. Why do you think those women are standing in their femininity? I just want to ask the question. Why y'all think why she's not hard and masculine and all sturdy and all that? Why is she not like that? It's because in her culture, she's a follower and not a leader in her culture. But in her culture, she's allowed to be cared for and provided for versus heading. In her culture, it's expected probably that she's a follower and not just submissive. It's not just the word submissive, but she's being provided for and protected and cared for, and she doesn't have a worry. It's the lack of worry that allows the woman to lean back and think, "Okay, I don't have to think. I don't have to put a sentence together. I don't have to think too hard. I don't have to worry." And when that worry is gone, she automatically is able to be more nurturing, more sweet, more sensitive, more intimate, more of a like more of a helper. She's able to do that versus when she's carrying the weight of the world and she can't figure out why she has anxiety or why she just can't relax sometimes. She is because she's carrying the weight of the world and it's not intended for her to carry all that. It's not intended. Can she do it? Yeah, she can do it for a decade. She can do it for 20 years. But the reality is the same person when you want her to relax on vacation and she can't, or she can't put the phone down, or she can't put when she can't stop and can't turn it off, there's a weight on her. There's a weight that's causing her to not turn that off, and she's turned off to something. That's what the world doesn't want people to know, is when you are fully plugged in to something that's not by God's design, if you're fully plugged into career level 10 all the time, you can do that. You can do it for 20 years, sure. When you're fully plugged into that, you're not fully plugged into your marriage. You're not fully it's hard to be 100% to everybody. It's hard to be. When you're 100% in one place, you're probably falling short in the other places. So, that's all I'm saying. I'm saying, can it be done? Yes. Is something else gonna suffer? Likely. You have to choose what parts you are gonna suffer a little and what parts are gonna suffer a lot, or how you balance out that weight. And I think it can be balanced. I think it's like you have to figure out how much weight you're gonna put in different spots. How much weight? If you feel that what you're putting in your work spot is taking away from your husband and your kids, that's when it's time to think, "Is this the right job for me? It's taken away from my husband and my kids." Because something's gonna you're gonna have to pick one in the respect of, is it the right role for this season? Does that make sense? Because once your kids are out of the house and you feel like you have extra time, maybe then it's the right season for that job, then it's the right season for it. When they're in the house and they need to go to a ball game, it might not be the right season for a heavyweight job. It might not. It might be. Maybe that's the only way you can do those things, right? But I would say that's something to think about really carefully, because those are the years you're not gonna end up getting back. And, I think if you ask some of the women who did really, really well for themselves, but they missed out on some of the critical moments, they're gonna look back and say, "You know what? I wish I made a lot of money, but I wish I'd have taken 40K less and had, 100 more moments." I think that's what they'll probably say. I think they'll probably say, 10K less, 20K less. And if I had all those moments, I think that'd have been a better deal. I think in their look back years, don't ask them when they're in the middle of it. When they're in the middle of it, they're on something else. I'm talking about when they've hit the retirement, when they've gotten to the point where they're retiring, and then you ask them, "You did really well for yourself. You did good. You did really, really good. Would you do it the same way again, or would you adjust a few things to get a little bit more in this other aspect?" I think 9 times out of 10, they would have been like, I did really good, but I noticed that my marriage suffered and it probably needed more of my presence, more of me in the moment. And the only way I could have had more moments is if I would have adjusted my career like a little bit. Maybe it's not quitting. Maybe it's like the job that had those work hours was not the right job. I should have went back to the old job. It made a little less money, but it was more peaceful, and I was more peaceful at home. Those kind of things, those little bitty things, I'm telling you, people don't talk about it in the moment, because if they talk about it in the moment, they're gonna have to admit that they need to give up 20K. Nobody wants to do it. In the moment, it's hard to say no to that, but when you're on the look back, then you're like, I would have liked to have seen a few more of those plays. I really would have liked to have been, participating in a few of those field trips. I really wish I could have gone to a few more of those games. Those games were really fun. I wish, you know, those are the things. I think it's a hard balance. I think it's a hard balance. But People figure it out. Everybody figures it out. Some of us figure it out sooner than others. I think eventually we all figure it out. I think it's just when we figure it out, a lot of us are quiet about it. The moment that we figure it out, we're usually really quiet about it and we don't talk about it because there's a part, I think for women, there's a part of us that feels like a failure. Part of us, not all of us. They were like, oh man, I think I chose wrong. Oh, I got duped. There's a lot of us who at a certain moment we're like, yeah, but I would have chose differently, but we don't talk out loud about it. And a few of us will talk out loud about it because it's not socially acceptable, let's be honest. Um, let's see. Major problem is that a lot of men, according to Les, do not know how to lead. A lot of men have been raised by just their mom and don't know what masculinity looks like, what the masculine role looks like. That's tough. Metaneo Michael says things have been skewed because yes, there have been men that are too forceful a leader and goes into an abuse of power. I'm traditionalist, yet I do believe the wife having a voice. That's awesome. And then Les says healthy masculine energy coming from a man who's fully plugged in allows a woman to be her genuine feminine self. There you go. Yeah, and Michael, you're right. Like the way a lot of this came about, when you look back a couple of generations now, unfortunately now it's a couple of generations since women had liberation. What you'll see happen is when men were given the full power and you saw a few of the men or a trend of some of those men abusing their power, it made women feel trapped in what God had designed to be good. That is the problem with the abuse of power, and that's not biblical. So, the Bible actually says the husband is to be, quote, understanding of the wife, quote. That's not me, that's the Bible. So, physical abuse, emotional abuse, abuse of power, that's not acceptable. It's not even biblical. But it is, if you look at what God designed, He gave dominion over the animals to man and woman. So God had designed us as a union to becoming one flesh, a partnership. But there will be a natural final decision maker. And I think that the way that will work is the woman has the leverage in terms of influence. Just one person makes the final decision for the family. It's just what it is what it is. That being said, when the woman is a strong person of influence and she puts out all of the information and says, "This is what I think and this is why, I'll let you sleep on it." When that man is in a position where he trusts, honors, respects, and he's thinking about the long-term things plus what she said, and he sleeps on it, you know, a strong man who is led by God and not led by his flesh. Remember that? Not led by his flesh, but led by God. When he goes and lays down to sleep on a big decision and he takes what his wife has given as influence and he's receiving that. And then he prays about it and he's led by God, there's no way he can make an error. So even if he goes and says, "You know what, wife, I don't think we should do that, but I've been praying about it and I heard what you said and, I've taken another couple weeks to think about it and I prayed about it and this is where I landed." You know, and that's where the wife is praying for the husband. She knows he's got a difficult decision to make. She's praying that God's speaking to him. That's why it's a value add when the guy understands his flesh. He knows when he's making a decision that's just um, a wicked heart wants decision, or an angry heart is responding, or a hurt, wounded heart is doing because of. That's why I said it's important to understand where you're wounded and if you're wounded. Um, it's important to understand that because once you know that, you know when you're being led by that and being pulled and dragged by that versus being led by Christ. So when you get down and you pray and you see God on it, He's going to reveal to you when you are being led astray or you're being led by impatience. Think about the fruits of the Spirit, Galatians chapter 5, versus the fruit of versus the Spirit of God. If you go to Galatians chapter 5, it's going to tell you when you're dealing with the fruit of the Spirit and when you're not. And when you are led by the flesh and then making decisions out of that, ultimately, um, ultimately that's going to have you on a wrong path. That's what I would say. So that's why I say it's important to understand when you're in the flesh. It's not because you can't redeem yourself from it. It's because a lot of the trouble that you find yourself in is a byproduct of entering the flesh, not knowing it, and not praying your way through it. Like if you are not aware that that is your flesh and you think you're just right, then you're never going to try to get right because your head is thinking what your wicked heart thinks. So it's knowing that you're in your flesh. Once you know that, you're in a lot better shape. Yeah, so when you're looking at that, it says here, the works of the flesh are evident in Galatians chapter 5 verse 19. Works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. So, those are the things that make you in the flesh. So, when a man is led by his flesh and making decisions, he can't make a right decision. So, that's what I'm saying. When he knows he's into your flesh. It is about when you feel that you're there, it's definitely my flesh. The sooner you can identify that about it, the sooner you can exit being in your flesh. It's the sooner you can do it. It's really hard to do it when you confuse your flesh for that's the direction you need to go. So if you're feeling angry and you feel to like take your fist and throw your fist and you think that's the right thing to do, but you're not realizing that it's coming from a place that's just angry. You cannot react in anger. Even if you're angry, you can't react in anger. You have to figure out, okay, how should I be reacting in this situation? What is the right reaction? And then even though you had feelings of anger and then you make a decision to react, properly, even though the situation may have made you angry, but your reaction is not from a heart posture of anger, but that situation made me angry, but I'm going to react with a heart of patience or something opposite of the flesh, something that is the spirit, which Galatians chapter 5 verse 22 says love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-controls. Against such things there is no law. That stuff, when you're able to feel anger and then say, despite this anger, I'm going to actually I want to throw my fist, but I'm going to respond in patience. Um, that's a big deal. Or if you can just get to a point where like, I want to throw my fist, but you know what? I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to go in this bathroom and pray really quick. Because that's how I've learned to respond to my flesh is like, you know what? Let me go pray really quick. I'm going to need that. I'm going to need that to get through this moment. That's what I would say. Um, those are the things I think, Michael, that make the man ready for marriage. I don't think it's about being perfect because we never will be. So there's this idea I feel the world tries to tell us to wait and wait and wait and wait on marriage. And I am not convinced that that's wise because we're never perfect. We're never going to be perfect. So I almost feel like we're still in a fleshly body, right? So I think what's more important is for us to be honest about where we are in our head, where our heart is moving, um, and not be deceived by it, but be honest about, okay, I'm doing this. Might be a good thing that you're doing. Let's say you're giving to the homeless, but if you're giving to the homeless, but you want to be seen as rescuing someone or saving them or something, even something that you're doing that's good, if it's done with the wrong heart posture, then it's still not good. It's actually not good. It's wicked. It's wicked. So that's what I think the men need to have is um, the sense of understanding the heart posture of what they're doing. And when they have that spiritual maturity, even if their wife is less spiritually mature, she will grow in that area. And so that's the thing. It would be really, really nice if we saw many of the men settling down also spiritually mature. I don't see a lot of that. I don't see a lot of it. When I say spiritually mature, I mean a relationship with Christ. I mean stopping in the midst of things, praying just because, worshiping and thanking God just because. I mean that. I don't mean like perfect obedience because I don't know. I've grown in my faith a lot. I was having one of these conversations with my sister in Christ probably, I can't remember, a couple of days ago, and we were discussing legalism in the faith versus just living. We were discussing that. And we were talking about this idea of grace, and you guys know greasy grace and all that, like just doing whatever you want. And that's why I'm so big now on heart posture because I think you can be doing everything right, and God's looking at you like you got 3 heads. And I think you could be doing everything wrong, and God is looking at you like, "You are still my child," right? I think it all comes in with heart posture. I think when you are struggling and you are reaching for God and you are trying to rise to your personal best, I think God's loving that you're trying, even if you're trying and failing. I think He's loving that you're trying, you're shooting for that. I think He's loving that your heart wants to do good things and do righteous things. I think He's loving that even when you fail. I think when you fall and it is out of pure rebellion, like you know better, you know what God wants, you know what He expects, but then you are just I don't wanna do that, and you guys know the difference. The difference is kind of like when you were a kid and, like, you know, you were asked to clean up your bedroom or something, right? And the difference is, like, the day that you woke up and you were rushing and you just forgot to make your bed. You just forget, like, whatever, and you come back and your mom's like, "You didn't make your bed." And you're like, "Oh my god, I forgot." I totally meant to do that. I really, really did mean to do that. You guys see the difference in the heart posture versus the other kid who is getting ready and they nothing no, nothing particularly went wrong. They had time to make their bed. They looked at that bed and they're like, "Psh, I'm not making that bed. She can make that bed herself. She wants it made. She can make it herself." You guys see the difference. Both kids go to school. Both kids come home, and both kids have a mom that's like, "Why is your bed not made?" Right? One situation, the kid's heart was like, "I forgot to make my bed, or I didn't make it. Oh my gosh, mom, I'm so sorry. I really didn't intend to forget, and I'll do better. I'll do better." And I did not actually, and it slipped my mind. I actually intended to make it. It slipped. I don't even know what happened, you know. And I want to do better. I want to do better. I'll make it. I promise you, I'm gonna do right. I'm gonna really pull it together, and I'll try not to let this happen again. I will really try versus the kid who did make the bed and came home and was flipped. When they looked at that bed before they left, they rolled their eyes like, "I'm not doing that. She can make that. She can make her own bed. She bought it. She can make it." You guys see the difference? It's the wickedness of the heart. God is looking at that. So I am so glad that I like grew up out of legalism because I understand that heart is what I apply to every kind of sin, every level. I don't care if it's murder. I apply that to every kind and level of sin. And then I think to myself, where was my heart in that? And sometimes even the good things, where was my heart in that? Where was my heart in that? Did I have really, really pure intentions? Because I look real clean with that, but did I have pure intentions or no? I like to think through that because there's something about it that I don't know. There's just something about it, where I think, when people sit down and they look at all the mistakes they make, just if you were to tally them up every day, man, we go to bed feeling condemned, ashamed, and just rotten every single day. We never feel like good about ourselves. But God, you know what I mean? Like we can sit down with our list of like rotten things and we could just say to ourselves, but God covered it and I'm so grateful. And that heart of I'm so grateful. He covered it. And not like the kid that's like, "You better cover it. You better make that bed. Better make that bed. I'm not gonna make it. Yeah, I want my bed made when I come home." look at the difference. Look at the difference in the heart of the rebellious heart that's hardened, that cannot appreciate the goodness of the mom who made the bed versus the heart of someone who's so gracious. Like, "Oh, my mom made my bed. Thank you. Thank you so much. Like, you did so good for me." Like, there's a difference in the heart. And so only God knows the heart. But yeah, I mean, what I would say is I've graduated out of legalism. I think um I think it depends on, the style of the pastor and preachers that you follow, whether you really even fall into legalism. But, I'm not saying that the pastors that I followed in the beginning were bad. I just understand, um I have more spiritual maturity now. I have enough to know that it's gonna take a lot for us to go from that wicked to the level of perfect that we need, but by the strength of Jesus, we can keep on getting up and trying, and I know it's more about the heart than it is about the work, and thankfully, we're saved. Thankfully, we're saved, and our heart wants to do good because we're saved. Because we're saved, we wanna do good. Les says, "You don't give to the homeless and then post it for recognition." Yeah, I don't do that. I think that's it's just off. I always kinda, like, picture myself in that situation, and then, like, whatever I'm doing, like, it never gets any coverage. It never gets any coverage because it just feels weird. It feels like a really vulnerable moment to have something recorded. So I often wonder how all that happens with other ministries, but I'll never fully understand. Um, so Michael says we can't be perfect. I will say at least the sexual immaturity struggle should be healed first, though. You know what's interesting? I find what's interesting is when we say that our sexual immaturity and struggle should be healed first, though. Like, we have to think about it. Um, we are humans, and there are certain things biologically that humans do. So, when I wonder if we feel that we're healed, put it this way, if we feel that we're healed in an area, are we gonna think that it's important to share that healed, like, or formerly broken area? Are we gonna think it's important to share that with our partner? Or are we as opposed as supposing that we've been healed, that we could just put that in the back pocket and leave it there and never speak about it again? Do you see what I'm saying? Think about it the way the devil thinks about it. If there was an area of your life, like a weak link in your chain, he typically comes to try to penetrate that weak link again. If there was an area where you did struggle, then he knocks on that specific area again. I think we see that in the book of Matthew, where the devil will try to turn around and go get 7 more spirits stronger than the last to try to re-enter, right? So, the reality is we can be tested. Even if we are healed, we are allowed to be tested again. And the devil often comes back and tests us in areas where we have had healing. That's the thing. So just because we're healed doesn't mean we won't be tempted, and just because we're tempted doesn't mean we won't fall again. Does that make sense? That's the reality. And the reality is I also think the Bible talks about having like, gift of celibacy, like, the gift of it, right? Um, I would say that is it's it's kind of like almost thinking, like, if you don't have this natural need to not have, a partner and have a mate, then it's like, maybe you do have that gift of celibacy. Maybe you have that as actual gift and that you can withstand these temptations for a lifetime. But there are, I think, a number of people who don't have the gift, and knowing that you don't have the gift, I would say then be on the path for like not casual dating, but serious dating because you're like, well, I don't have that gift of celibacy. So I need to be looking for my forever person. Because I don't have that gift. So let me look for that person. If you have the gift, then you don't really have to look. But I think knowing the as a guy, if you don't have that gift of celibacy, which is perfectly normal to not have that gift. Some people do have it, but for those who don't, I think that's perfectly normal to not have the gift. I think that you position yourself for wickedness if you know you don't have that gift, and then you intentionally allow yourself to casually date for 20 years. See what I'm saying? When you think about you're going to casually date for 20 years and you don't have the gift of celibacy, we know how that story ends. I mean, I'm just saying, it's just 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 the reality. So, yeah, I think if you have the gift, then you're not as easily tempted, and maybe it doesn't even come to mind a lot. So, in areas where you're gifted, like let's say in areas where you're gifted, let's say you're gifted in the area of public speaking, then you don't have to think before. Like I didn't prepare anything before I logged into the thing, right? I would say my gift is chatty, open my mouth, talking, because I didn't prepare anything. I just turned on the button. So, in areas where you're gifted, you can more easily be effective than the average person who's not gifted in that area. I think that's how you would know. It's more easy for you. Maybe either you feel less tempted or you just have strength. You have a supernatural strength, or you just do better with preparation. You do 10 times better in an area, kind of like a personal ACT test. Like maybe you didn't study, but you do score really, really well in reading comprehension, right? You just score really well in that area. If you just score really well without studying, but then if you study, you score even better, that's your gift. That's a gifted area for you. It comes easy to you. That's a gifted area. So if you are gifted in the area of celibacy, celibacy just comes easy to you, and you're able to you're not as easily tempted when temptation comes. It's easy for you. And you're better at it than the average person seems to be. I think that's how you might know that you have a gift for it. Now, if you don't have a gift for it, maybe you are celibate, but it's hard. It feels hard. It's daily. You're praying and you're hoping and you're asking God. And it's like a daily thing that you have to like pick up your cross and carry it every day. And you feel that weight of that cross every day, then that's probably not an area that you're gifted. You have, by the grace of God, you're withstanding it. You're withstanding it because He's keeping you up. And when you fall, you're getting back up because He's gifted you to recover and recover, and you're getting back up again. But I think the person who's gifted, it's coming easier to them, and it's coming easier to them. They're falling less, and they're not. You're not even able to understand the people who struggle a lot. It's like harder for you to understand. It's because you're gifted there. Whereas the next person who's not gifted there, they're like, oh yeah, when you told me about that story, I felt you on that. I felt that way last week. I just didn't fall, but I almost fell. But I almost fell right there. I almost slipped and fell right there in that puddle. That's somebody who's not gifted. So if you know you're not gifted, I don't think that it's like, oh my gosh, I'm ashamed I'm not gifted in the area of purity, right? But you might say, well, I'm not gifted there. God understands I'm in a physical body. I best to try to settle down and get married so that I can share that with someone because I'm not gifted for celibacy. I think the problem is, I think people know they're not gifted for celibacy, but then in their head, they say, "Oh, but I wanna casually date." See, that is a more rebellious thing right there. It's like, you're not gifted for celibacy, but you're actively like, "I really, really, really am okay with sexual immorality, but I know I'm not gifted for celibacy, but I'm not looking for a partner. I'm not looking for a permanent one. Nah. Nah. But I'm not gifted for celibacy either. Nah." That I would be like, we would probably need to revisit with God, having a conversation about, God, what's going on with my heart? Can you help me there? That's what I would say. I would probably encourage you to have chats with God about heart. Like, if my heart is not right, can you reveal it to me and help me get it right? It's probably what I would pray. Just because you typically will know, like, I kinda know where I'm rotten in an area. I kinda know where I'm rotten, like, I know it. I know it. I know where I'm tempted. I know where I'm just rotten. I know that, and then, when your heart is for God, you're a lot of times trying to, like, "Okay, I know this is an area where I struggle. How can I hedge myself up? Like, how can I just plan to, like, not fall versus planning to fall?" Because I think there's a big difference there even in the heart when you're like, "Okay, I'm not praying before this situation. I'm not planning against it in any way. As a matter of fact, I bought me a special outfit just to prepare to fall." Like, then, that's a whole nother thing. So I think that there's a difference between preparing to fall and then, "Oh my goodness, I fell." I think there's a difference between that and literally, I didn't plan to fall, I fell. There's a completely difference right there. So, but that being said, thank God for his grace that he is a loving, forgiving God, and that we can ask him to help us, like, "You know what? God, you know what? I wasn't seeking you on this. I was rotten. God understands that we go through these phases where we're like, "You know what? I hadn't thought about it like that. I was just I had rotten intentions from the moment one. I actually had rotten intentions. I knew exactly what I was doing." Do you know what I'm saying? God knows when we had rotten intentions from moment one, but will we admit that to ourselves? Will we actually say to ourselves, "You know what? Let me roll this back." I mean, roll it back and try to think, "Well, did I plan to fall more than I planned to stay strong? Did I plan to fall more?" And then when you walk it back, you're like, "Actually, yeah, I was planning to fall. I was kinda having some wicked intent there." He knows our heart. So that's the thing about it. When you think about it, knowing that God knows our heart and then knowing, can you even imagine? Just think about that. Like, think that's a wild thought. Imagine if the person you loved, like, could read your heart and your mind, could read it. Like, you couldn't lie, you couldn't hide, you couldn't, like, play games, you couldn't deceive them. Like, no matter what you said, how good you acted out with them. Imagine if your partner could, like, actually, read your mind. Like, read your mind and understand your heart. Like, if you were, like, faking it all, they knew it. They literally knew it, and they could, like, see it on a typewriter going across your brain cells. What if they could see that? And then imagine when we try to deceive them, how crazy we looked. Just over there trying to deceive them, knowing that they could see the little printer. Like, there's, like, a little printout in little words, like a little scroll bar at the bottom of your brain where they could see everything. So imagine if it was like that, and then we're sitting up there, like, acting out this whole deception scene, and it's all, like, on a typewriter on a scroll bar right on the top of our forehead, and they could just see all of it. Imagine how much more wicked and crazy we look, knowing that we're trying to play this game like we care when we don't. And then, like, we're not trying to get right. And it's just like, how hurtful is that? Like, this is a love relationship, and look at what love looks like. And I think about stuff like that. Like, I make up these things, and then I think, oh my goodness, that's how we act with God. We actually act like that. We actually sit up here, and I haven't seen Bruce Almighty. I don't even know that. If that's a movie, I've not seen it. So, you know what? It shows you what kind of creative mind I have. I could have wrote that. But, like, think about it. Think about that that's how it is, and then remember that that's how God actually knows us like that, knows us, and are we doing the self-evaluation to know, like, where was my heart at on that? So when we try to act like, "God, my heart wasn't there," like, let me tell you the story about when I was rotten. When I was, like, 3 or 4 years old, I think I might have been 3. I was smart, y'all. I was super smart when I was little. I mean, I'm okay now. I was really smart when I was little. And so at 3 years old, look at these children scheming at 3. At 3 years old, my oldest brother worked at a, Danny and Clyde's at this little, corner store, and he brought home a little bit of cash, he brought home a little bit of money, and I knew I wanted some of that money. So, I devised a whole plan of stealing the money and then getting permission to have the money and then keeping the money. And so, I took a dollar out of his wallet, literally took a whole $1 bill out of his wallet. Then I went to my mom and presented the $1 bill, and I said, "Mommy, I found a dollar in the streets. Is it okay if I keep this dollar?" And she's like, "Sure." And so I kept the dollar, and then I was happy. I thought I had gotten away with it. Look at this rottenness, y'all. This actually happened. My brother gets home from school because this is before I started school, so I had to be like 3. Um, I might have been like 2 and a quarter, like 2 and 3 quarters, because I started kindergarten at 3. So I was home before my older brother, and my oldest brother came home. He counted his money, go figure. He found a dollar missing. He goes to my mom and he says, I've got a dollar missing out of my wallet." And I was just like, within 3 hours of me presenting the $1 to her, there was a dollar missing from his wallet. Mom comes to me and she's like, "Hannah Marie." And I was like, "I did it, guilty. I took it. I took it." I admitted it right away. And she's like, "Give him the dollar back and apologize." And I did. I gave him the dollar back and I apologized. And I felt horrible afterwards. That's the one time I can remember stealing something. I don't recall stealing anything else ever, but I was like 2 and 3 quarters, 3 years old, and I stole that $1 bill from my brother. And, but look at the deception there. Look at the deception. Look at how I planned it, and it was all really premeditated. I wanted the dollar, so that was like covetousness there. I wanted what someone else had, and then I took it. So I was a thief. So it was covetousness. Then I became a thief, and then I presented it to my mom as my own. So there's deception. So I became a liar. Look at that one incident. I went from covetous to covetous. Which, think about that. Ooh, this is good, y'all. I went from covetous, meaning in my head, before I actually acted and did something bad, it was in my head. I was thinking on wrong things, which is the Bible tells us not to think and dwell on wrong things. We're supposed to get our mind captive. So I was thinking about something that I shouldn't have been thinking about. I was thinking about how Maya wanted that money. That's what I was thinking. And then the covetousness went into theft. Then I actually acted on it and committed the next level, which was the sin of actually taking the money, took it. Then I presented it to my mom, which is more deception, and then got permission to keep it, which made me feel better, which was just me tricking myself into feel better. And then when I got caught, I immediately felt convicted and felt horrible. And I don't remember stealing like that again. But when you think about, and that's at 2.5, 3 years old. So guys, this is why we need a savior. This is why we need Jesus Christ, because even before we have a well-developed mind, there is wickedness there that needs to be worked out. And that wickedness came down from Adam and Eve, and it hadn't changed, over 2,000 years later. Actually, that was 6,000 years from now. But it hadn't changed. It hasn't changed that we needed a savior and we needed someone to help us get cleaned up and get right. It never changed. You guys know what I mean? So that is the benefit of Jesus Christ, is that we need someone when we are covetous, lying and deceiving human beings who steal and premeditate things and have a wicked heart. Like, I didn't take that money so I can give it to the homeless, y'all. I kept the money. I wasn't trying to give it to anyone. I wasn't even trying to do something good with it. I can't even use that as an excuse. I just wanted to keep it. Think about that. Like, just think about how horrible that is. And this is why we have Jesus. So when we do things like that, we have someone to cover that sin and someone to help change our heart so that we don't desire the money and the covetousness, the things that got me into that sin, so that I don't have the same desires anymore. that is what Jesus does for us. He changes the desires of our heart from wicked desires to desires that are more and more like him over time. So don't tell me we don't need Jesus in our lives. But yes, Michael says, I did have that happen to me once, and I would reply with, "You are so bad at lying to me." Caught in the premeditated bull-faced lie at 2 and a half. I sure was. I mean, I'm guessing I was good at it because I did get away with it for a few hours. I mean, it was until the stories all matched up, until they all matched up. But man, I will tell you. Oh, for the youth, I know I miss doing my lives. I have, like, 9.5 months of school. I'll be live more after I get out of school. I just, like, trying to be on schedule with being in school, y'all. It's like as the years go by, I feel like I've gotten a little bit, like, less energy since I began school, and just 3rd year in, I'm telling you, it's just the energy level is like I'm counting down. I'm literally counting down. I have 9.5 months left of school. 9.5 months left. Basically, I'm birthing a school baby. When I finish birthing this school baby, I'll be back online all the time. But it's just one of those things where it's just been hard. Mr. Michael has a question about isolation. Having a I keep hearing the bad side of isolation, but isn't isolation a good thing considering Yeshua and John the Baptist were isolated in the wilderness? Um, I would say isolation, it depends. It depends. It depends. It depends. When I first got saved, the first thing that happened was I went into wilderness. That's the first thing that happened when I got saved is I went into wilderness and God sent me into a wilderness. He wanted me set apart so he could work on me. And in that time, he was working on my flesh, on the desires of my heart, my wickedness. He was delivering me. He was just getting all kinds of stuff out of me. So I needed to be in isolation because I was super hard headed and I did not really want to change. And by myself, God was able to just influence me more and actually change me. Now, isolation can also be bad because you have to remember that it is godly fellowship. We're meant to be in a church community, so we're meant to be in godly fellowship. And the devil likes to get us alone to tempt us and things. Sometimes he does it with other people, sometimes he does it alone. So I think it depends on where you are in your walk. It depends on what's going on. That God can actually use everything for good, but I feel like there are seasons where God has you set apart and alone, and He's working on something specific with you. He might be building your faith. He might be just drawing you near Him. It might be something where He's just working on something with you, where He's got you just with Him. But I can tell you, I've had seasons. I feel like I'm in this season right now. I feel like I'm in a season right now where I am spending more time with people who are in the faith. Like, I feel like I spent less time. Believe it or not, when I was in seminary school, I feel like I spent less time with people in the faith. I feel like I spent less time. I was more isolated and less, it was more about me and God and less about me with other people. Since I left seminary, I have been craving fellowship with other godly people. So I've been finding myself over and over and over again in circles of people who love God. And I think it's the season that I'm in is a season where I'm either needing that, like, even when I'm, like, super duper busy and like, man, like, if I go to church today, my homework's gonna get crunched, blah, 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 this and that. But I'm finding myself craving so much just to be in godly circles. I'm definitely, definitely not in a season of isolation, but I have been in a season of isolation. So, I feel like there are some seasons where when you're around when you've got godly fellowship, it's actually harder for the devil to penetrate because there's almost like a hedge of protection with you in that inner circle because you got people like, look, when I need prayer, I call someone and they're praying for me. Just when I'm having conversation, I'm like able to connect with people who are like minded. And it's a season thing. And that's where I'm at right now. I feel like I need that. And that's what I have right now. But it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that that won't change and that I won't need like another quiet period where I just like need some quiet time where it's just me and my Bible, me and my prayer life, me and my secret place. It doesn't mean that won't change. Um, it's almost like when the season is done, you start to get more revelation about the season. You get some revelation in the midst of your season, but you don't get all of the revelation. There's some revelation that even happens after the season is complete, and you'll understand more why God had you partnered with a group of people, or more why God had you set apart after the fact. So I know the time that I was in isolation, I would actually call it a wilderness or set apart because I do feel that God had to work out a lot of things in my flesh that if I was around people, I didn't have a godly circle anyway, but I would not have beat the things that I needed to beat or even get the strength to know that's my flesh. Like, I would even I thought that that was just me actually, and that's what I thought for the longest time. I said, "Oh, like, these bad habits. This is just me." I didn't even realize that I was under attack. I didn't even realize that at times I was under attack and at times I was just battling my flesh. I did not even realize that. I was like, "Oh, that's just who I am and what I am." And those are the tricks that the enemy will play on us is he'll make us think that everything is just us when we actually are either under attack at times and other times we are just battling the flesh in, the areas that we're lacking in discipline sometimes, sometimes we're just battling that. But Les says isolation for too long is bad. Um, if you stay isolated for too long, you start to stink, so come out of the isolation. It just depends on the season, but I think Les is onto something. When God hasn't put you in a wilderness, you have to just kind of sometimes be careful because that isolation, you have to think like what's happening to you in your isolation. And that's what I would probably say. Like, what's happening to you in your isolation? Are you drawing near God? Are you praying more? How are you feeling? Like, what's going on in your head? What kind of inner thoughts are playing in your head? Or what kind of battles, or is there something going on that's different with your battles during the time that you're isolated? Like, that will say a lot. Do you find yourself more in the flesh versus in the spirit? Because that's going to help you understand if you are if you are in isolation and God has you being introspective and prayerful and trying to work on self-improvement. I think there could be some real meaning to that. Um, Especially if God's breaking you away from toxic people. And when he's breaking you away from toxic people, you may be in isolation for a minute because he's just saying, "Nope, not them, not today." But I think there's a risk to just being in isolation and not being in a place where you have like a productive mind. I think if you're just in isolation, um, like on one hand, you're like, oh man, I'm avoiding some sin here, right? Somebody might be saying that to themselves. Um, it depends on where you are, what season you're in. Like sometimes you just need that quiet time, but other times it's the isolation that's positioning you to have troubling thoughts, or making you think on things that are wicked. Sometimes it just depends. Like I can liken it to the meditation where people are blanking their mind out and emptying themselves. That I think is kind of dangerous. If you are isolating and then like going like blanking yourself out, kind of just quiet and not really in your Bible or self-reflecting or doing something productive, if it's just kind of like a blanked out time period and you're not doing anything particularly good, I'm gonna start to wonder if it's useful to be in isolation like that so long. And then I'm gonna start wondering, what are you thinking on? Well, what are you thinking on? Like every day isn't just quiet up there. So what are you thinking on? Where are those thoughts taking you in your head? And are those thoughts taking you to being more in the spirit per Galatians chapter 5? Or are the thoughts that you're thinking taking you to being more in the flesh? Ultimately, um, if you feel like God's doing something with it, then I think it's good, but I think, God has seasons for it. He has seasons for isolation, um, and it's usually not like an ongoing thing for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. I don't think that's necessarily something that he does because there's a lot more, we're built to be in a body. We're built to be in, the body, meaning like it could be a church or it could be fellowship, but we're meant to be part of a group of people who can pray for you, watch out for you, mingle with you. We're meant to be in a body. So, in a body of believers, so to speak, that to strengthen us. Walking for too long alone, I think can be troublesome, but I think everybody kinda knows herself. When you've gotten into your 30s and whatnot, you know when you're starting to, like, think on things that are not good for yourself. I think by the 30s, you probably are very well aware, like, "Yeah, I'm thinking on some things that are taking me to a dark place." Once you're doing that kinda stuff, you you know you're probably in trouble, like, that's an unoccupied mind that the devil is trying to begin to occupy. Does that make sense? That's an unoccupied mind that's in trouble. Once you're starting to think on things and dwell on things that make you sad, depressed, angry, you know, um, that's an unoccupied mind that the devil is actually trying to get a hold of. And that is a person who needs a prayer circle. See what I'm saying? That's a person who probably needs to get out of their time alone in isolation because it's going to be difficult to withstand those attacks when you don't have someone who you're like, okay, people that are praying for you, people that are looking out for you, people that are checking in on you. I think that we have to be cautious with stuff like that. Um, there's a season for isolation and wilderness, but even in the midst of it, you know it. I feel like it's just instinctively, you're like, oh no, God's working on me right now. But if it's God's working on me right now because you're in a place of I'm afraid of, out of fear, then you might just be avoiding people. People do that too. They're like, they try to, oh, God's working on me. Their God's working on them. God's been working on you for how long? So you're hiding from people. Like there's at some point you might be hiding from people. Not you specifically, but you know what I'm saying. Somebody might be out there hiding from someone, and under the guise of God's working on me. I mean, yes, God is working on all of us, but you know, I mean, everybody's situation is different, but I think we know when God's working on something with us. Because a lot of the times we're in that isolation. We know what he's doing. It's good for us. We know what's good for us, but we're in that isolation. And we're like, "Phew, it's hard though. It's hard, but I know it's good, but it's hard though." Like we'll often be thinking like that. Anywho, um, that's when you start talking to painted face soccer balls. Crazy stuff. All right, guys, I'm about to head off. I'm gonna go to bed. It's time for me to lay it down. But it's been great catching up. I thought I would catch up with you guys. I broke my TikTok. I don't know what happened to it, but I think at a certain point, it needs to be something. I don't know. I haven't figured it out. I don't go live over there very much, but wanted to say hello to you guys. Um, I'm surprised nobody had any political questions tonight, but guess what? I'm too sleepy to talk about them now. Catch you guys next time. Bye, everybody. Happy Monday night or into Tuesday morning. Talk later. Bye, 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 everybody. You're welcome. Bye.